Hello everyone. Today's topic of discussion is UNCLOS, United Nations Convention on Law of Sea. A number of times questions have been asked from this area in prelims examination as well as in the mains examination. If you look at the question, already in 2021, a question has been asked from this area. This question will take up after the discussion. So let's start with the discussion. UNCLOS, which stands for United Nations Convention on Law of Sea. As the name suggests, that it is a comprehensive legal framework to govern and regulate the oceanic areas of the world. So this is the simple understanding of UNCLOS. So basically, the oceanic zones, the oceanic world has been divided into different zones in order to properly regulate them and govern them. Govern them with respect to different maritime activities. जैसे बहुत सारी maritime activities होती है. For example, maritime activities like fishing activity, navigation, overflight, then scientific research works, then it also controls the environmental pollution in the oceanic areas. So all these activities are to be regulated, are to be governed through this UNCLOS. So basically it provides a set of conventions in order to regulate all these activities in the oceanic world. So if we look at the history of UNCLOS, the history of UNCLOS goes back to 1940s and 50s during the time of World War II. World War II के time पे we see a number of discoveries happening, and discoveries were also happening in the oceanic world as well. So due to presence of abundant maritime resources, which we get to know after the discovery, the coastal states started entering into the oceanic bodies. So this resulted into conflicts and the tensions between the coastal states. अलग अलग nations अलग अलग वाटर बॉडी पार्ट में एंट्री करेंगे तो वहां पे कोस्टल टेंशन शुरू होगी. In order to put an end to such tensions, in 1956, an important meeting was held in Geneva. एक मीटिंग हुई जेनेवा में. यूनाइटेड नेशंस ने इस मीटिंग को कन्वीन किया. United Nations called for a meeting in Geneva in 1956 in order to govern and regulate the oceanic regions, oceanic areas of the world. And after discussion and deliberation, in 1958, 4 conventions were adopted. 4 conventions were adopted. And those 4 conventions were, first convention was Convention on Territorial Sea and Contiguous Zone. Second convention was Convention on High Seas. Third convention was Convention on the limits of continental shelf, and fourth convention was Convention on Fishing and Living Resources, living resources in high seas. So these four conventions were adopted in 1958. They came into force in 1960s. These four conventions are together known as UNCLOS 1, or you might also find a name Quad Conventions. Quad Conventions on Law of Sea. So these Quad Conventions are also referred to as UNCLOS 1. As I said कि they came into force in 1960s, अलग अलग टाइम पे 1962 में कोई आया, 64 में आया, 66 में आए. तो another meeting was called in 1960 जिसको बोला गया UN Clause 2, UN Clause 2. Modifications, changes were done in the existing conventions and efforts were made to implement them, to make them to come into force. So 1960s में basically modifications and changes were done in the existing conventions. And then in 1960s, these all four conventions came into force. Then from 1973 to 1982, in this time period, three meetings were convened by the United Nations. And in these three meetings, the final outcome was UN clause, जो present today legal framework है to regulate and to govern the oceanic world, that is UN clause, and that came into force in 1982. So after several meetings between 1973 to 1982, finally UN clause came into picture. It was adopted in 1982 and it came into force in 1994. So this is how UN clause came into existence. Obviously, we know that UN clause main responsibility is to fix the rights and responsibilities of the coastal states in order to govern and in order to regulate the oceanic world. So this UN clause, the present day UN clause, has divided the oceanic world into different zones. So let's see those zones. So UN clause has divided the oceanic world into different zones. So on the surface of the oceanic world, on the surface of the oceanic world, there are four zones. Let's look at them. So let's say this is some continent. Let's say this is peninsular part of India. This is a continent. And this is the average shoreline of India. This dotted line presents the average shoreline, which is technically referred to as baseline. इसके अंदर जो वाटर है, this water is called internal water. And beyond this, we have different zones. Internal water is basically the part of the landmass. So जो एवरेज शोर लाइन के towards the continent side है. Once we enter into the ocean from this baseline, this is oceanic part, up to 12 nautical miles. Up to 12 nautical miles from the baseline, this zone is called territorial sea, or you might also find territorial water. Then next 12 nautical mile is called contiguous zone. So if you look from the baseline, contiguous zone starts from 12 nautical mile to 24 nautical miles. And from the baseline up to 200 nautical miles, maximum up to 200 nautical miles, it is exclusive economic zone. EEZ, exclusive economic zone. And beyond this exclusive economic zone, next zone is known as high sea. So there are 4 zones on the surface of the oceanic water. Territorial sea, contiguous zone, then exclusive economic zone, and then next is high sea. And if we talk on the seabed, the zones are, first is continental shelf, अगर हम लोग सी बेड की बात करें, मान लेते हैं ये डेप्थ है सी के, तो ये मैं ड्रॉ कर देता हूं. तो let's suppose this is the continent. On the bed up to 200 nautical miles, let's say over here up to here, it is called continental shelf. So usually continental shelf is up to 200 nautical miles. But in certain cases, this might exceed up to 350 nautical miles. And this extension up to 350 nautical miles is subject to the recommendation from Commission on Limits of Continental Shelf. So, but usual cases it is up to 200 nautical miles. And next to the area beyond 200 nautical miles on the seabed, it is called international seabed. So these are the divisions, these are the different zones which have been recognized by UNCLOS. Now let's see the rights and responsibilities of the coastal states with respect to these zones. So starting from territorial sea, I said it is extended up to 12 nautical miles from the baseline. So the coastal states over here have exclusive jurisdiction with respect to fishing, navigation, scientific research, all these things. They have exclusive jurisdiction. तो up to 12 nautical miles, coastal states के पास full control. They have the full control. So it is somewhat the rights of the coastal states in this zone is somewhat equal to the rights on the land territory. So it is considered to be part of the land territory of that coastal state. So the laws which are applicable in the on the land territory, those laws would be applicable here in the territorial sea. But it does not mean that in the territorial sea foreign vessels cannot enter. Foreign vessels are allowed. Foreign ships, foreign vessels are allowed, and they are allowed subject to the rights of innocent passage. Rights of innocent passage का मतलब कि the ships and the vessels should be provided the safe passage till the time they are not hampering, they are not threatening the security of that coastal state. So these foreign vessels have the right for the innocent movement, for the innocent passage in the territorial water, in the territorial sea, provided that they are not threat to the security of the coastal state. So foreign vessels are allowed here. These lines could be there in the prelims examination. Second, I said contiguous zone. So contiguous zone starts from 12 nautical mile from the baseline up to 24 nautical miles. This is also called transition zone. This is also called transition zone. Why? It is a transition between territorial sea and exclusive economic zone. So in this zone, the coastal states have the right with respect to the implementation of their laws which they can implement in the territorial sea. So in case there is some vessel, there is some ship which has violated the laws and the regulations of the territorial sea, the coastal states might enter into the contiguous zone in order to implement those laws and regulations. So contiguous zone. Third is exclusive economic zone, EEZ. Exclusive economic zone, which is extended up to 200 nautical miles from the baseline. And in this zone, the coastal states have the right with respect to the economic activities pertaining to natural resources. So 200 nautical miles तक जितने भी natural resources present हैं, the coastal states have the right for the economic activities. They can go for oil extraction, they can go for fishing, they can go for all these activities, the coastal states. At times you'll find exclusive economic zones. Not at times, mostly exclusive economic zones and continental shelf. They are same for the coastal states. But जैसे मैंने बोला कि on the recommendation of the commission on limits to continental shelf, the continental shelf can be exceeded up to 350 nautical miles. तो सी बेड पे जो भी रिसोर्सेज प्रेजेंट है, दे कैन बी एक्सट्रैक्टेड, दे कैन बी एक्सप्लॉइटेड. But fourth is high sea. This high sea belongs to common mankind. Common humankind. No coastal state, or let's say any particular coastal state, will not have jurisdiction, exclusive jurisdiction over the high sea. Because it belongs to common mankind. So fishing activity, navigation, scientific work, all these things could be done in the high seas by any of the coastal or non-coastal states. In order to exploit resources in the high sea, all you need is license or permission from International Seabed Authority. So let's say you are coastal state of India and you want to exploit the resources of high sea, international seabed, then you need to seek the permission from the United Nations. United Nations में एक designated body है which has been created under UNCLOS, and that body is International Seabed Authority. It will give you the permission to exploit and to extract the resources from the high sea, from the international seabed. Is that okay? So International Seabed Authority gives the permission for the exploitation, for the extraction of the resources present in the high sea or international seabed. And this body has been created under UNCLOS in 1994, when this UNCLOS came into force. Now, we've understood that by dividing the oceanic world into different oceanic zones, UNCLOS is making efforts to govern and to properly regulate the different maritime activities, which includes fishing, navigation, overflight, scientific works. But at the same time, there are certain criticism to this UNCLOS. So what are the criticism? It has been criticized for certain things. First criticism is that it has limited participation. Limited participation as in, if you look at the participation of UNCLOS, at present 167 states along with European Union are party to the convention. But if you look at closely, USA is not party to the convention. USA being involved highly in the maritime activities is among the most developed nations of the world, which has huge political and geopolitical influence in different parts of the world, is not party to the convention. So it has a limited participation. Second problem is ineffective binding mechanism. Ineffective binding mechanism, the best example would be the claims over South China Sea. Despite the fact that International Tribunal on Law of Sea has defined the claims of different countries surrounding South China Sea, but China is not ready to accept those uh, the claims given by the International Tribunal. So it has ineffective binding mechanism. It does not have any mechanism, any effective mechanism to enforce the provisions of the UN clause. So that is another major problem. Another problem is with respect to increasing marine pollution through oil spills and over exploitation of resources. The maritime pollution is increasing, but UN clause has not been effective in order to contain this maritime pollution. Next is there are certain emerging problems like climate change. Due to climate change, the sea level is rising, the oceanic temperature is changing, and again, UN clause does not have effective and adequate mechanism, adequate provisions to control this. So it is failing in this direction. Next, we can say in the disputed territories, it is ineffective. Where the coastal states are not cooperating in solving their border disputes, over there also the UN clause is not being effective. Then another problem could be related to overfishing. Since UN clause allows the fishing activity in different zones, obviously that is subject to international agreements, but even then also it is resulting into overfishing activity and which is hampering the biodiversity of that oceanic part. So all these are the criticisms of the UN clause, and in order to effectively implement and to make the oceanic world safer and environmentally healthy, all these issues needs to be addressed as soon as possible. So this was about the UN clause. If you have any doubts, you can write it in the comment section. And now let's see the question. This question was asked in 2021. Consider the following statements. First statement, Global Ocean Commission grants license for seabed exploration and mining in the international waters. So it is not Global Ocean Commission, rather it is International Seabed Authority. That I told you that it was created in 1994 under UN clause. This commission is related to some initiative in 2013 to 2016, which was related to keeping the oceanic body eco-friendly. So it is not related to the seabed exploitation. So this is incorrect. India has received license for seabed mineral exploration. If you follow the newspaper, you'll get to know that India has started deep ocean mission in 2015-16. So India has already received the license from International Seabed Authority for exploiting the resources in southern Indian Ocean in the high sea. So this is correct. Second statement is correct. Rare earth minerals are present on the sea floor. Yes, we know different kind of resources are found on the sea floor. Polymetallic nodules, rare earth metal, a lot of things are present in the international water. So third statement is also correct. So accordingly, it is asking the correct statement. So answer becomes 2 and 3. B for Bombay is the right answer to this question. So this is about UNCLOS. Thank you so very much for being with me. Have a great time. See you in the next session.